I don't know if obsession is the right word, but
Hmm.
but it really kind of grew from there. And throughout high school, I would go any night that I could. I mean, Friday nights, obviously Wednesday nights. There was stuff on Monday nights, and sometimes
Yeah.
church services on Sunday nights. And
So when you were a
there,
teenager, you were one of those church kids as a
yeah,
teenager. When your friends were out partying and drinking and stuff, you were at Bible school,
yeah.
Bible
I
study.
never went to a party at all in high school, and it wasn't even because my parents or anything. They weren't even really that strict. They were actually pretty awesome. It was just all my choice. I was so strict with myself trying to
Yeah,
follow.
yeah. From what you've told me so far, like, since I've been getting to know you, you really loved Jesus, right?
A
Like you
lot.
really believe that you love Jesus. You said that you used to spend hours a day in the
Oh,
morning worshiping.
yes. I loved worship. I mean even now I listen to music all of the time and I feel the connection to music. So it really was just very similar to that, but back then a lot of the times it was just worship music. So
Yeah.
I would just let all of my emotions out, and I have a lot of emotions.
Don't we all?
So I would just, it was very therapeutic for me to pray. And I mean, in the Pentecostal church, it's a lot of praying out loud, a lot of speaking in
Yeah.
tongues out loud, and
Yeah.
pacing. And you're really just kind of feeling, it feels like you're just getting stuff off your chest.
Yeah, it's a very Pentecostal church services are very interactive.
Yeah.
You're very much into it, yeah. So tell me then, before we go on to like when everything kind of fell apart for you, tell me how would you have described your Christianity or your relationship with God for like at the best of your Christian walk? What would have been? How would you have described yourself?
Probably extremely zealous. I mean, a lot of it was my personality, who I am now. I mean, because I'm still very much like that about things I'm passionate about. But back then, I was extremely zealous, passionate, um, almost kind of motivational about it with anybody. I mean, especially like younger women, younger girls in the youth group or in master's commission, things like that. But I would definitely was very passionate, and I felt like I called myself an intercessor back then.
Oh
I
yeah, me
loved
too.
praying and praying for people. And
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. And so, for many years, your Christianity served you well, and you were quite happy.
yeah, yeah. And I even had favorite scriptures that I would really hang on to, like the one like where he says you will do greater things than these, or
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah,
spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in you. And so
yeah, yeah.
I always had these hopes of, like, you know what, I am going to be the best Christian I can. I am going to try to go as deep as I can in prayer and
Yeah,
worship. And if I have to, I'll fast, and I'll give up everything I need to give up, and it will all be because there's going to be miracles someday.
yeah.
And because I really
Wow.
thought that there would be greater things than these, or
Yeah,
that something
you really
amazing was
believed
going to
it.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So tell us then when it started. Can you pinpoint a time when you felt that you started to doubt or?
I'd have to say it was probably about a year before I left, and I left in September of 2013. So it was just 8 years ago. I just had my 8 year anniversary of leaving. And so it was about a year before I left. So somewhere in about 2012. And I remember one specific clear instance where there was a pastor in open Bible churches, and he was an older guy too. So it was kind of shocking that he changed his mind too. But he left open Bible churches and he became a part of the UU churches, the Universalist,
Oh, yeah.
Unitarian
Hmm.
churches.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of, or most of the Universalists, they don't believe in an actual hell. And so he was posting a lot on Facebook, and this is, and I, kind of like I do now, debating a lot. I was debating this guy too, because I thought, like, oh my gosh, this guy's going through like some sort of crisis or something. I gotta help this guy out.
Oh,
And
you
so
are
I
trying
would,
to bring him back into the fold.
yeah, I was. And so I was debating with him a ton, and he was actually very nice and very kind and was giving me a lot of information. And that's when it really opened up for me. Oh my gosh, there's not a literal hell. I mean, not even biblically. It doesn't even,
Mm, yeah.
it's even biblically, if you look at the original words that hell was translated from, there's not even biblical backing that there's an actual hell. And so that really got the wheels turning for me, because I was like, well, if that's off and what we've been threatened with all this time is like kind of a moot
Yeah.
point a little bit, what else was
Yeah.
false? And so I started really looking into that a little bit, and I started joining more conversations online, and it was honestly kind of my saving grace to be online. It was between watching YouTube debates. I started listening to The Thinking Atheist with Seth Andrews, like, religiously.
Love him.
I had my headphones in and I would just listen to this stuff and I absorbed it in. And so I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, so the hell thing, obviously that's out. So then I started going on thinking about creation, and I was like, okay, so evolution is true, and we were always told it wasn't. And so the earth is not 6,000 years old. And so then everything just kind of snowballed from there. And it was like, okay, so man wasn't created from dirt and woman wasn't created from the rib of a man. Snakes don't talk. Burning bushes don't talk. There wasn't a worldwide flood where there was two of every animal abroad.
Yeah.
There wasn't a man who lived inside of a whale for 3 days and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
survived.
yeah,
And the list
yeah,
goes on. And
yeah.
so, and then it was really eye-opening to me when I started tapping into some of Dr. Bart Ehrman's stuff, and I was like, oh, so there's no evidence of Jesus or the entire Christian century.
Wow.
And so that really got to me. Then I had actually gotten a little bit more into the Old Testament, which was something that I never really tapped into before. And as much, I hung out in the New Testament quite a bit. That's real feel good stuff. So then I realized, oh my gosh, the Bible's full of misogyny, oppression, slavery, incest, rape, and
Mm,
all of this stuff. The Bible condones it, and because it condones it, it breeds an environment for these things to happen even
yeah,
now. Like,
yeah. Were you
and
still
that
in the
was what I
ministry?
experienced.
Were you in the
Yes.
ministry then? Oh,
Yes.
that must have been difficult to be questioning those huge doctrinal points. Um,
Yes.
yeah, because there's not a lot of room to question it, especially if you're in the ministry.
Yeah.
That must have been really
I
hard.
I didn't tell anyone for about a
No.
year. No one at all. I was scared because I was afraid it was gonna, cause my husband at the time, my ex-husband, to lose his job, because he was
Wow.
still a pastor and he still very much believed. So much so that we didn't really discuss it much, because he was so closed off to it. And
Yeah.
on top of it, if I didn't really feel safe enough to say anything and speak up, and I didn't really have a leg to stand on. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a job. I was a stay-at-home mom as well as
Yeah.
working with the church. I mean, my life was the church.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Who are you going to go to in church to say, I don't know if I believe this shit anymore?
yeah, and I
Yeah.
mean we had one car. I mean, I
Wow.
couldn't even get in the car and go or
Yeah.
anything.
Wow.
And so I kept it to myself. He ended up finding out about it. He saw some stuff in my phone, text messages about it.
Hmm.
And so
And
I ended up having
how long of a process would you say, like, from the time when you first started questioning hell, for example, till you said, I don't even think I believe in the God? Was it a long process?
yeah, I'd have to say probably about 6 months. Uh,
Okay.
6 months or so, where I finally got to a point where I didn't feel comfortable saying the word atheist really until
Yeah.
about a year later. Not until I
Yeah.
had actually left. I never really used that term. I would say more free thinker or I'm not sure if I believe. That's really as
Yeah.
far as I felt comfortable saying, but I
Yeah.
did not believe.
Was that it was part of that reason for not saying that you were an atheist, that you had the a misconception about what an atheist was? Like
No.
a lot of believers really think that atheists are just like really mean, cruel people who kind of spit in God's face. And so
Yeah,
that term, like, just, I would have said, "Oh, I'm not an atheist. I'm a nice person." Like, you can't be both.
it just felt like a huge scary leap to say that. And I
I
didn't
would
I
imagine.
was almost like a denial too. I didn't really want to admit it, and I didn't want to admit it out loud because I was almost I just almost felt like it was going to be offensive to even say.
Yeah.
That's still something, Ashley. You think about like 6 month time period from when you first started, and prior to that was all these years, all the way back to your early childhood of having these thoughts just drilled into you and just
Yeah.
assumed to be true. That says a lot about a pretty aggressive time of exploration for you, I would imagine.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
feel kind of during that whole time period when you were doing that? Was there any other feelings other than what you've shared already that kind of
You mean
characterize
when I
that time?
started to question and I
Yeah,
started to lose
yeah,
my faith?
yeah. Especially in the
It was
context of ministry and so forth. Yeah.
yeah, I mean it was heartbreaking for me because I had dedicated my whole life to it, and
Yeah.
I really thought that that's just what I was always going to do for the rest of my life. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm coming up to 30 years old and I'm going to have to start over. I I don't have much education really to I don't know how I'm going to survive out there." And and it was just really heartbreaking that something that I had devoted my whole life to, that I felt so strongly and so passionately about, wasn't true. And it wasn't hard to admit that I was wrong, but I just felt so embarrassed that I was wrong about something that I devoted so much time to. And I went through all of that time, and I went through college, Bible college, and I dedicated all of those years to master's commission and to the church. And then I was like, so this is wrong? And so,
Yeah.
in order for it to be wrong and to say something, I have to completely disconnect myself from
Yeah.
all of this, from all of these people. It couldn't
Yeah.
have been a halfway thing with them.
No. And it's not like it's somebody with a career in medicine or law. I mean, when you're in the ministry, it is like, I mean, you could leave a job as a lawyer and still keep all of your friends and family. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're a minister and you say, I don't believe this anymore, you may as well be prepared to start over.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I did. I had to. I had to. I had to completely
Yeah.
start over.
So how did you finally tell somebody? Who did you tell first that I'm having these doubts and I don't think I believe anymore?
I called my stepdad. I Because
Oh, okay.
he's not a believer, and he was like the safest person I could think of. I probably could have called my mom, but my mom's a believer, and um, I just wanted to talk to somebody that would tell me what I wanted to hear. Really,
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
that it's okay to question. We'll get you back here in Ohio. We'll get you back home. will help you get home. That's really what I wanted to hear. And so I called him and I was like, you are going to need to sit down. I mean, cause like, I mean, you know, I told you, I think in the past episodes, we talked about some of the crazy things I did, like with Harry Potter and like how I
Yeah.
threw some of that stuff away. And I
Oh
was like
yeah.
real
You were.
strict about things in the home. So
Yeah.
he was really shocked. And so I called him and I was like, I don't know what to do. I have nobody to tell, but
Wow.
I don't think I believe this anymore. I don't think I believe in God. And he thought I was joking. And so then when I started talking about podcasts and named like Dr. Bart Ehrman and mentioning some of those people and like Dawkins and stuff, he was like, "Oh, so you have been looking into this. You really have been." And I was like, "I need
Yeah.
help. I feel so trapped. I can't be here. You got to talk to my
Wow.
mom."
Huh.
Yeah. And so then you told your mom, like, is that how it went?
Um, I, I, I didn't tell her for quite a while, to be honest. I had actually kind of gone through a lot of trouble in my marriage before I finally got to the point where I really started expressing myself to family members, trying to get out of there.
Yeah.
But that whole process went on for a good 5.5 months before I finally really started opening up and
Wow.
called them and was like, "Hey, I got a bus ticket. I'm packing my
Wow.
bags and I'm coming."
So what was the turning point? What was the turning point for you? And first of all, I gotta know when did you tell your husband and how did he react? And what was the turning point that actually, maybe I'm jumping ahead, but tell us how your husband felt first when you said, yeah, I know I'm an assistant pastor, associate pastor, but I don't think I believe anymore.
Well, that whole thing, it feels really fuzzy to me still a little
Mm.
bit. I we didn't really, it feels odd looking back on it because it feels like when I did tell him, because like I was saying, he had gotten into my phone and he saw text messages that I had where I was talking about this stuff.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
so he questioned me and he's like, "What's this all about?" And I said, "Well, I haven't believed in God for quite a while." And yeah. So then,
Wow.
but I was like, "But if you want, I can show you some of the stuff that I've come across and we could talk about it." And I I don't remember exactly what he said, because it was 8 years ago, but we never sat down and really had any extensive conversations. He never let me show him anything. It was kind of really like he was in denial and he thought that I was going to come back around. And so we just never really talked about it. And it just kind of got worse and worse to the point where I was like, well, I can't do this anymore. I can't be married to somebody that believes this, that feels this way, that doesn't want to hear me, let me be who I am as a person and express myself. And you won't even take the time to hear where I'm coming from. And so I just didn't have, I feel horrible saying this because he really wasn't that, he was a pretty good person for the most part, I guess. But but and I felt bad, but I wasn't into it. I wasn't attracted anymore. I it was such a huge turnoff to me, and I did not want to be there. I did not want to be married. I eventually, this is so embarrassing to say, but I will own up to my mistakes in the marriage. I hurt him really bad. I had an affair on him. Not in the sense, and I'm not going to justify it by any means, but not in any sense where you're thinking of this big wild sexual affair or anything. It was mostly text messaging, somebody that I went to high school with, and really kind of befriending them, but it did cross the line a few times. And so I owned up to it and I told my ex-husband about it. And so instead of it being something that was between him and I, he went to the senior pastor, and the senior pastor came over to our house that night and wanted to know the whole story, took notes, and then the day after that, the day after that, well, he had his laptop out and taking notes of everything.
Really?
Sitting on my couch in my living room. It was humiliating. And
Oh my
and
God.
so
So like he asked you questions, personal questions about your marriage and all that kind of stuff.
details of things that were said between me and this other guy, and details of the things that physically happened. He wanted
Wow.
play by play, like his own little porno book in his
Wow.
laptop, basically. And then there was another guy that was
Oh,
higher up leadership, that came over the next time, regional board leadership. So basically, what ended up happening was the regional board and the senior pastor and our governing board are so church board and regional board of our
yeah.
denomination came together to make I call it a contract. It's basically a contract, but they called it a restoration plan, and it was a contract of rules. And so that was the last 5.5 months that I was there. I followed it because I did not want my ex-husband to lose his job as a pastor in that church or in the denomination. And so I
Yeah.
followed these rules. So,
Again, another thing that's
Yeah.
different in the ministry, a pastor, yeah, his job would have been in jeopardy for having an unbelieving wife. I mean, there's so much about the ministry that's, people wouldn't really think about. But yeah, he would have, his job and yours would have been in jeopardy. It's
very
crazy.
much so, very much so. I mean, it it was beneficial to him that I announced that I was an atheist to, some of the board members eventually, because according to the open Bible bylaws, that allowed him to still be a pastor because that followed scripture,
Oh,
divorcing,
I
but
gotcha.
because divorce, according to scripture, divorce is
Yeah,
okay under certain circumstances. So when it comes
right.
to an
And-
unbeliever,
Yeah.
or divorce, they either need to be dead or an unbeliever. And so I went ahead and I committed that one seven deadly sin, the blasphemy, and denounced the Holy Spirit and all that. It wasn't like a ceremony thing. It wasn't like a thing. I just like
You didn't
What would
end
that
by
ceremony
speaking
look
in
like? I want
tongues.
to know what that.
but
Ashley, tell us about the contract because
I
I'm so interested.
I know. I wish I had a copy of that still, but earlier today I went through and I wrote down everything I could remember.
So why do you
So,
call it a contract? Like, did you have to actually sign it?
oh, I signed it. I had to abide by it, and if I broke it, I don't know. There was going to be consequences of some kind. We were going to be taken out of the church.
Wow.
It was basically to give me a second chance to get right with God and
Okay.
to keep us in the ministry. So basically, I had to step down from all ministries and I had to be a part of this restoration plan because of my affair, and
And
it
what did it
became all of
entail?
their businesses. And so the my church board and the regional church board created this restoration plan for me. I'll read it for you. This is what
Yeah,
I
read it.
remember.
Yeah.
This is what I remember. Okay, so obviously I had to step down from all the ministries, and like I've said in
Yeah.
the past, I was a part of basically everything except for women's ministry or men's ministries. um, I had to go to Christian counseling 2 days a week. At a professional Christian counselor that they chose for me, and I had to meet with the lead pastor every other Wednesday to check up on my progress. And then on the alternating Wednesday nights, I had to go to the adult church services, the Bible study, because I couldn't lead the youth group or kids church or anything anymore, so I had to go sit in with all of them. And at the time I was 26 years old, and the youngest person besides me was like 80. And
So what do you mean by check on your progress? Like what kind of progress? Like what would he ask you?
Oh,
Have you been sleep with anybody? Like seriously,
yeah,
what?
I don't I think it was more stuff like, how are things going with you and Nick? Because I was really voicing like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be married
Oh,
anymore. I don't love him. I want to leave. I want a divorce. And so a
really?
lot of a lot of these meetings were me voicing these things.
And how would that
And
be met then? What
huh?
what 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 how would that be met if you said, "I want a
Oh,
divorce, I don't wanna be," did they what
they
did they
would tell
say?
they would tell me divorce is not an option. Divorce is wrong. If it would be against God, and he would lose his position within the church and stuff. And on top of it, they drilled this phrase into me that, oh my God, it made me want to lose my mind. But they would say, loving him is a choice. And I was like,
Yeah.
shouldn't I feel it? Like, shouldn't I have the emotions? Like, I should
Yeah,
feel like I want to love him. And I loved him as a person. Like, I don't wish him any will ill. I just wanted to leave. I just wanted to separate myself and go back
yeah,
to Ohio where my family was.
yeah.
And so they basically would just tell me, no, it's a choice. You need to wake up every morning and you need to choose to love him. And I was like, that doesn't work like that. But
Wow.
I'd have to meet with the pastors and the regional members, like some of the regional leadership. There was like a group of them. We would have to meet together monthly, and we'd have to go over my progress, similar to the one that I would have with the lead pastor. I had to delete all of my social media accounts and combine them with him. We had to have a combined account. I wasn't allowed to have any of my own. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere overnight without him. Um, they said what their words were was that I was incapable of making my own decisions, so I had to have him with me. And I if there were certain males that came into the room that I was in, I had to walk out of the room. I wasn't allowed to even be in the same room as them or make eye contact or
Whoa,
anything.
whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 wait. So you would
unless
be in the
unless he
room
was with me. Unless he was with me.
unless your husband was with your ex-husband was with
If
you.
if he was in the room with me, I could stay in there. But if he wasn't with me and there were these other males, I had to walk out of the room.
Wow.
And then this is the doozy. This one's crazy. So with a Verizon phone plan, there's something that you can put on a phone plan, typically for a teenager, but it's called 20 trusted numbers. And so on that phone line, you can put the only those 20 numbers and the only those 20 numbers can contact that phone number. And so my ex-husband and like the senior pastor and stuff, they had to approve my 20 trusted numbers and put them on my phone. And so
Ooh.
I had like family members, like cousins and stuff like that couldn't get a hold of me because I could have some family members on there. But I mean 20 adds up real fast, and I had to have some of those people were like other wives and stuff in the church that I was required to have on there. And so I was completely cut off and when my mom had her
Wow.
wedding, because that's in Ohio and I was living in Iowa at the time. When my mom had her wedding, I wasn't allowed to go. My ex-husband couldn't or didn't want to go, whatever it was, and so I couldn't attend because I couldn't go without him.
Wow. Actually, I'm just wondering that the disconnect, how this felt, and how you perceived it, the disconnect between you having real questions and coming to real conclusions about like what this, how the validity of this religion that you professed and you committed your life to, where they're obsessing just purely on your conduct as they see it, like your conduct and your conformity to this contract. What was that? and yet you're trying to have agency and voice yourself, voice
Yeah.
what you truly want. And yet there's this hyper controlling effort that just completely minimizes or bypasses all those questions that you would have probably have wanted to have had the opportunity to say, well, this is why I believe, or this is why I
Yeah.
don't believe anymore. Does
Yeah.
Yeah,
that make sense? And
I
what is
really
that like?
wish I would have felt comfortable to really voice my opinion about some of that stuff, because kind of what really ended up happening, and I do not condone whatsoever what I did. I know I hurt my ex-husband, and I would take that back if I could. I would do that differently, and I would respond differently. But at the same time, I felt very trapped there. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I wanted to leave and I couldn't, and I was reaching outside of my marriage in some way. I was in communication with that guy from high school, and it was back home, and I'm like, I just want to go back home.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
not that that was right at all. I mean, that whole thing was a mess, and I learned my lesson on all of that stuff. It was just young, dumb stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, even getting married to begin with felt young and dumb. I mean, I was like 22, I think, when we got married, and 24 when I
Mm.
had my daughter.
Mm.
And so when we got married too, we were in master's commission together, and we were traveling around a lot, and everything seemed exciting. But then it just was different when we were married and we were at home and it was just us. I was like, I don't know you, and we
Mm.
don't vibe. Like, what
Mm.
is this? And it was like, as time went on, I was like, this is not what I wanted. This is, and and it wasn't enough to be able to say, I don't want this. I want to be able to leave. I want to move back to Ohio, and I want to have a divorce. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that this isn't what you thought it was going to be, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I want to move on. And it didn't seem like it was that easy. They held on to me so hard. They made me feel like I deserved to have all of these rules on me, that like
Oh, that is, yeah.
I really felt that way. Like, well, I deserve this. I mean, I deserve to
Yeah.
kind of suffer for a little while because I hurt him and I did something wrong. And that's really not the case. I mean, it really was nobody else's business. It really should have just
Exactly.
been him and I. And
Yeah.
I should have been able to simply say, I don't believe this anymore. I'm sorry that it hurts you, but I want to leave. I want a divorce. I want to go back to
Yeah.
Ohio. And I think that that should be okay. But they made me feel like I would not exist successfully outside of the tribe.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that I was going to suffer out there, and that out there, out
Yeah.
in the world, like, you're safe here, but if you go out there, you're going to be deceived and Satan's going to get you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You must have been living with a lot of guilt and shame and fear. I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, and having marital problems within the church is a whole different ball game than, secular marriages or whatever you'd want to call it.
yeah,
Yeah, and so you had no voice. I mean, you couldn't even,
Yeah.
you weren't even allowed to talk to whoever you wanted to talk to, let alone explain to somebody why you don't believe in God. You couldn't even contact the friends that you wanted to.
no, I
That's such
couldn't.
control. Like that is a
Yeah.
that's if your husband, if you're married to somebody who has that control, who tells you that you got to leave a room if a man comes in, or who tells you that you can only have so many calls on your phone, that is that's abuse. We would call that an abusive relationship, and that's what you had with your church.
Yeah, because looking back and thinking of my ex-husband and stuff, he personally I would not say that he's a bad person. He's not aggressive. He
Hmm.
himself is not controlling. He's
No,
out there and he's
that
duped
system.
by other people, and he's
Yes.
indoctrinated, and he's sucked in by that crazy lead pastor. I mean,
Yeah.
I more so feel bad for him, and I try my
Yeah.
hardest to be cordial with him for the sake of my
Yeah.
daughter.
Yeah. He was
Um,
in the same. So this message that came up, first I'm going to go back and read somebody named Tyler Pflieger. Do you know who
oh,
that
that's
is?
my husband.
Good, because he says you were looking good. And
Thanks.
then my so Angel said being accountable to a church is so messed up. It reminds me of when a teenage girl in our church I remember this, had an unexpected pregnancy. She was only 16 and had to stand up in front of the whole congregation and apologize for having sex.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the kind of background we came to. It is Angel's right.
Yes.
There was a big emphasis on being accountable, and as women, we weren't just accountable to the pastor or the church and God, but also we had to be accountable to, well, depending on where you were, it was either your husband or all men,
Yeah. Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Or and have like an accountability partner.
Oh, that sends chills up my spine.
I know.
An
Um,
accountability partner. I was saying to you the other day, in my circles, we were saying, you have to be under a certain umbrella, and it was all about accountability. And so there was a lot of talk about umbrellas. And I said to Ashley the other day, there was times I felt like taking an umbrella and shoving it. I don't even want to hear the word umbrella anymore.
Yeah.
I know. I know. We
Yeah.
said covering.
Covering. Oh yeah. There you
Covering, yeah.
go.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
said
you can't. I
covering like
mean, if you're a woman, you can't be going out all uncovered and shit. I mean,
Yeah.
I
crazy.
I
know.
just, Ashley, I'm just wondering. I mean, that, like you said, like life out there was where they were telling you where all the suffering was supposed to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the irony of that here you are as you're describing it. I mean, this is genuine suffering that
Yes.
you
Yeah.
are being put through by the church
Yeah.
in order to protect you from the vague suffering out there that would be caused when you just do nothing other than just be true to yourself
Yeah.
and
Yes.
direct your life in the direction it wants to go. That's
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yes.
So
amazing.
how bad did
So
it get, Ashley?
so when I was at the very end of it, so I followed that restoration plan for 5.5 months. And then I decided that I was not going to go to one of those Wednesday night meetings with the lead pastor. It was supposed to be just him and I in his office, and I don't know. Ew. But, I told him I
That's
wasn't going to
interesting.
come.
That's a little bit of a double standard, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And so I sent him a text and I said, I'm not coming tonight, and I'm not coming back at all ever again. And so that kind of sent him into freak out mode. And I'm not
The
kidding you.
pastor?
Yeah, the pastor, the senior pastor, because I was assistant pastor, my husband and I,
Right, right.
ex-husband and I, and he was the lead pastor. And he was way too into everything having to do with our lives, way too into everything that I was into. It was like a weird, odd obsession, really
Like
creepy.
what? How so?
Well, when I left, or I wanted to leave, he called my phone 33 times the day before I left, like the day that I told him I wasn't coming, and then he came to my house pounding on my doors, shouting my name for me to come out and open the door. Come on, we can talk about this. And like all, it was really weird. And
Not your husband, but the pastor.
the pastor, my husband, was at work. He drove a bus for the city and he was gone during the day. And so the pastor was there and it was just my daughter and I, and it was scary. I was like, I had the doors locked and like the blinds or like the curtains shut and stuff, and we were just kind of sitting there and hanging out. And so I was getting things together and I was packing up a suitcase because I was leaving that very next day, and I ordered a megabus ticket online. I got really lucky. I remember it was $25 for the first ticket and $1 for the second ticket. So Ella and I got on the mega bus for $26 and I went home with just a suitcase.
Oh my God, Ashley.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was really crazy. I mean, I literally had nothing. I left everything back in Iowa. I did not want anything at all from him, from anybody. I completely started over. I ended up
Yeah.
having to eventually get a car. My mom had to help me out. A couple months down
Yeah.
the road, I finally got a job, but I had to live with my dad for a while. Yeah, my dad and his wife, and staying with a few of my family members during that time. And it took me quite a while to get on my feet a little bit, but the biggest thing was 2 weeks after I left. It was already hard enough as it was, you know, all of those things given into account, but they decided to kick it up a notch even after that. So, here I have something I want to read to you guys. I My mom had written an email to the pastor, the senior pastor of the church, and she was very upset finding out about him reading this letter out loud to the church. And the way that these went, because, and I know this because it happened a month before it happened to me, the senior pastor had done it to his own daughter-in-law. And during these things, they publicly shun. They tell the church members they're in the middle of a regular church service, and during announcements they'll say, "We have an announcement after church. Anybody that considers themselves to be a member of this church family can stay after for an important announcement." And obviously
Yeah.
people are curious, so everybody's
Oh,
gonna
I know
stay.
those. I know those exact. I have been in those exact meetings, Ashley, and you've never seen so many people stay after church in all your freaking life.
Yeah, I
As when the
know.
pastor says, "We got some,
We
we got
got
some
something
big
juicy,
news."
Well,
guys.
juicy, exactly.
Yep,
And
yep.
Yeah.
and so
If they knew beforehand, they would have packed a friggin' lunch and sat there
I
listening.
know. Well, and when I left, it was super abrupt too. I really didn't say anything to anybody except for the senior pastor.
Well, I'm
I
sure they would have
never
tried to talk you out of it.
Well, yeah, I didn't want anybody to talk to me. I was just trying to get out of there as fast as I could. So
Yeah.
I have like never set the story straight. I have never really explained to very many people at all, unless people from that world have come to me to talk to me after all of these years. But I've never really set the story straight or told anybody the things that really happened. But after that happened, my mom caught wind of this public shunning that was about me. I was not there, but it was about me, held 2 weeks after I had left. So my mom was pissed, and she wrote him an email and basically ripping him a new butthole for airing my dirty
Yay,
laundry.
moms.
Yeah, I know. And even though my mom was not condoning my actions or anything, like she didn't understand anything that was going on with me, but she was pissed and she did not like that he was putting me through everything that I was going through. So I'm going to read this email. The first part starts off with the lead pastor talking to my mom, addressing my mom about why he read this out loud to the church. And then he even goes on beyond that, and he willingly sends the letter that he read out loud to the church. So that is actually how
Oh,
I have access to this. My mom has had it for all these years, and I asked her if she still had it, and she luckily did. So any place that has my ex-husband's name, I'm just going to say the ex-husband. And there is a part where he addresses the church and he says the church's name. So I'll just say like "Dear Church" or something like that.
yes,
So I'm not
sure.
saying any specific names. Okay, so Carrie, that's my mom's name. While I appreciate your concern for your daughter, this is kind of long. I'm just gonna brace you, but I'll get through it, and It'll take about
Go
5 minutes here.
Go for
But
it.
Carrie, while I appreciate your concern for your daughter, I strongly disagree with your outlook on this matter. First of all, I have been helping the ex-husband and Ashley with their marriage for over 3 years now, and I am considered by many of my peers to be very gracious, forgiving, and non-condemning to a fault. I always preach and live by hate the sin and not the sinner. I had to announce this publicly because she was a pastor in our church. The ex-husband wanted to be there for the announcement. He was not forced. When someone takes a position in leadership in the church, there is a higher standard and more responsibility. That is why it had to be announced in a public manner. If she wouldn't have been a pastor or a part of our leadership team, it would have never been talked about up front. You need to be cautious about the words you use. I didn't give the congregation any details, as you put it. The only thing I said was that Ashley has decided to walk away from her marriage and the church. I never talked about personal or private details. I never violated any confidentiality that I had with them from our counseling. I'm not sure where you're getting your information, but I would say it is very flawed. Also, I am very sorry to say this, but with my experience with Ashley, and by her words, she claims to be a very good liar. If she is the one giving you this info, ask for phone numbers, ask for names, call them, ask them what they feel or what I've said. What you will find is that most of what you have been told is not true. She has been very deceptive in many ways over the years and has manipulated situations for her benefit. Our church and region has invested thousands of dollars into her in-state education and professional counseling, as well as countless hours on my part. If I didn't love the sinner, I would have replaced them both years ago. As lead pastor, I need a strong couple to be my partners in ministry, and I didn't have that much with them, primarily because Ashley kept proving to me that she couldn't be trusted. I even
Oh
told
my
her about
God.
2 months ago at a funeral visitation that I was praying over her and the ex-husband could someday grow through all of their junk and take this church over if I was ever called away. That's loving the sinner and trusting them to grow, mature, and giving them hope. One of the final things I said publicly was that we had the same responsibility to pray for Ashley as we do for the ex-husband. Here is what I see as the main point with all of this. Ashley wants everyone to accept her and her actions. This can't be. I have encouraged everyone to pray for her, but be clear that they don't endorse what she has done or is doing, just like you did at the very beginning of your email. She is most likely getting confused on the acceptance of self versus the acceptance of sin or choice. If Ashley called me today, if Ashley called me today, I would answer and talk to her, but she wouldn't know that loving her is very different than accepting her actions or the current path of deception and selfishness she is on. I would love to continue the conversation, but I would prefer to do it by phone. Also, I'm not sure what you mean by all Iowa Open Bible churches. P.S. Here is an exact copy of the letter I read to the church. Tell me what is not true and what is hurtful. Tell me where it is not forgiving. Dear church family, September 29th, 2013. During our lives, we go through many trials and hopefully experience numerous fond memories. All of the places and things that God allows us to walk through can be for our good if we love Him and keep our eyes fixed on the mission that He has ordained for us to fulfill. Today is not one of those fond memories, rather a tough trial once again. It is with a very heavy heart and great sorrow that I announce to you today that Ashley Blake, last name, has decided to walk away from her marriage and the church. During my 4 years of ministry here with you and during their 5 years of marriage, Ashley has been involved in multiple inappropriate relationships outside of her marriage. In partnership with Open Bible Central Region, church name, has been walking her through a restoration plan with the hopes of restoring her as a leader while helping her develop a solid Christian character once again. Job 5:17, Blessed is the one whom God corrects, so do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. Unfortunately, Ashley has decided that instead of being restored, she would rather walk away from her marriage and the church. This information is not given to us so we can discuss it or entertain it in any conversations amongst ourselves. We will handle this matter in a way that will glorify God and make His word true to the world that we live in. We will not use this information to gossip, discuss, or even inform others that are not here. This information will not be posted on any social media by the church or anyone calling this church home. God promises that He will not give us more than we can handle, but we all reach a point where we say, okay, God, I think I'm at my limit. Our church has been through so much over the last few years, and we are tired, hurt, and even broken, but God is in control. We can't control the situation. All we can do is respond in such a way that brings glory to God, repentance to Ashley, and healing and comfort to Pastor ex-husband. Please only use this information to pray for healing, release freedom, and reflect on your own life and the secret areas that you have not totally surrendered to God. Lastly, know this is all that is done in the dark. Lastly, know that all that is done in the dark or in private will come to light. Be careful and cautious. Don't let yourselves be deceived into believing that no one will know. God does, and at some point, everyone else will as well. Don't throw away your family and friends, as well as your testimony, for
Wow.
a little short-lived excitement. The enemy is stalking and ready to pounce on the ones who get
Wow.
too close to the edge of selfishness and self-gratification. Be strong in the Lord. Be accountable to someone today about your struggles so you develop a testimony instead of a spiritual obituary. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact a governing board member or myself.
Wow. Wow. Talk about making a spectacle of you, hey? Making an example. You were a cautionary tale. Yeah.
And on
Wow.
top of that, Open Bible is a very small denomination. It's very similar to Assemblies of God, but it's
Right.
very small. So once that church family knew, it spread very quickly to the 12 or 13 other Open Bible churches in the city, and then spread from there very quickly across the whole denomination. And so when you're a pastor in Open Bible, typically a lot of people know who you are because it's just such a small group of
Right.
people. And so hundreds and hundreds of people knew. And I had to basically fall off the face of the earth for like 7 years. I just got back onto social media like a little over a year ago. And I changed my phone number and everything because what he was saying is exactly what happened. What he was telling them not to do is exactly what did happen. I was basically being harassed. I had so many people calling me and emailing me and sending me really aggressive
Oh,
messages.
you mean they
And
weren't just praying for you? They were actually using it against you.
oh yeah, they were mean. They were malicious.
Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. How did you feel when you heard that that was read in your church? I mean, you were there for years.
I was
Wow, that must have
so
been so
devastated.
humiliating.
It was like, I mean, I had zero friends after that. All of those people wanted nothing to do with me. I mean, now that they knew that I walked away from church or that maybe I didn't believe and that I had supposedly of multiple inappropriate affairs and things like that, they just couldn't associate with me anymore. And so
Yeah.
I mean, and I couldn't really connect with the people very easily for a while that I had known here in Ohio either. So
Yeah.
it was like I lost everyone, and
Yeah.
I did not talk to like basically all of those people for years. I've only had a few people contact me over the years. Um but it was devastating. I mean, I had to completely cut it off. There was no, it was not slow, it was super abrupt.
Oh.
Didn't you say that you sent them, you tore up the contract?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember tearing up the contract, and when I had sent the lead pastor a text message telling him I wasn't coming. I was like, screw you and your contract.
Yeah. So I think what people might not know is like when you're in the ministry, your marriage or anything, like you really do have to conform. There's not a lot of wiggle room for you to have your own say and stuff. And I mean, I can't imagine going through that kind of marital trouble and having all that pressure put on you, and the shame and stuff. I mean, God, that's terrible.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think that I was necessarily completely in the right or anything, and I don't justify
Yeah.
hurting my ex or anything, but there definitely should have been a completely different way that all of that went down. And I really expressed for a while that I just wanted to cut ties and leave. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want anything, guys. I just want to
Yeah.
go.
There is a very unhealthy accountability though, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like you don't hear that word since we've been out of church. How many times have you heard that you need to be accountable to somebody? But, for years and years, that was a really big deal, was accountability and somebody making sure that you were being good. Yeah,
Well,
it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, and
definitely.
I just have to. I feel like I need to say this, that obviously, um, what's really upsetting, especially for me in hindsight, is the ease and severity of this discipline, especially when it comes to women, but the
Mm-hmm.
lengths that the church will often go to protect and not bring, shame or disgrace upon men when
Yeah.
they do that. And I'm speaking candidly as somebody who, like, yeah, I benefited from this innate unfairness towards women,
Mm,
to elevate what they perceive as this, breaking of a code or conduct and of, holy living or what have you. But the lengths that the church has clearly shown in its history to preserve and to protect men in leadership almost at all costs, and often in great secrecy, is just something that's particularly disturbing. It's hard to hear in this context, and I think it's something um, that needs to be recognized as well. So,
yeah.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of my story in the aftermath of all of that too that I really wish that I could share. But uh, maybe one day, like, I mean, maybe years from now is what I'm saying, I would like to be able to share it. But because it involves my ex husband and my daughter, I, and I've told you guys this before, but I do want to add in there, just in a vague sense, that this did not stop here. This is just the part that involved me specifically. And the amount of control that these people tried to have on my life extended far into my divorce, involving my daughter. Very traumatic things. The most traumatic part of the story are those things. But I told her that I wouldn't share some of those things just for her own privacy. And, like I said, I try to these days to be cordial with my ex-husband. But it's hard because I want to express that because the Bible condones this stuff, and because the way that the church is set up, and the fact that there are certain men that are just always put at the top, even if you're some sort of female leadership, female pastor or anything, there's still men over you. And
Yep.
this breeds the opportunity for really destructive things to happen. And I don't know if they will ever listen, but specifically, hopefully, if the lead pastor, if he ever comes across this and he watches this, I hope that he knows that he made my life and my daughter's life a living hell for years. And my daughter is still um, suffering from physical symptoms from the stress of things that happened years ago. Um, it
Yeah.
it's a reminder, a physical reminder of things that happened years ago. And so what my opinion is these days, especially because of that stuff, like I didn't believe for logical reasons, but then they really kicked it up a notch with all of this crazy, all of this control, the misogyny, uh,
Yeah.
the public shaming, and the control that they tried to even have on my daughter and I even after we left.
Yeah.
You
They
guys
don't.
caused freaking trauma in my life. If you
Yeah.
guys ever freaking watch this, I hope you know that. You made my life a living hell for years. And I have a super strong stance now that religion is detrimental. It is traumatic. It is wrong. I cannot think for the life of me anything good that could come out of it. And anything good, like I've said before, that could come out of it, you can create any of that outside of religion. Religion is
Yeah.
dangerous. It is detrimental. And I mean, even on a small scale, but this large scale, these crazy things that happen and the things that these churches do is
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And they get away with it because it's in the name of fucking God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And they feel very right in what they're doing. I mean, they would probably still feel that what they did to you, that shaming and that control, they don't see that as abusive because deep down, well, not deep down, but in their doctrine, they do believe that women are to be subservient to their, at least to their husbands. And like I said, some denominations believe that all women are you know, should be subservient to all men, not just their own husbands. So yeah, they feel like they have a right to it. And here they were destroying your life, stealing your voice, just making things miserable for you. So much for loving the sinner, the sinner. Hey, hating the sin and loving the sinner. You,
Yes.
I bet you didn't feel very loved.
No.
No. I felt very
No.
hated and shunned and shamed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
what I don't. That's
I
my
was only
issue with
loved
it.
if I did it according to their way.
Exactly. Exactly. Which sums up Christianity in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You are loved as long as you are towing the line, and yeah, that's right. Ashley,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just really have enjoyed hearing some more of your story. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming on. I can imagine that that must have been difficult to share some of those things. It's not easy to fess up to your faults, and
Yeah.
but yeah,
I
I'm
struggled with what I was going to share, but I was like, you know what? This is probably the best part of my deconversion story because I mean, obviously the part of my deconversion story that is like really what started it was just what I found out about the doctrine and how it was not infallible. Like it was not the inerrant word of God.
yeah,
It's completely erroneous and it's filled with horrible information. You cannot go to it for anything historical, any sort of like decent facts, and anything like morally valuable. I mean, it's just a
no,
piece of trash doctrine, honestly, and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really what got it going. But then the aftermath of kind of going through that and trying to go through the process of pulling myself away from that is what made everything traumatic. So, the logical reasoning, the critical thinking, all of that came first. And
yeah,
they hated that. They hated that that's what was going on with me.
yeah,
And they did
yeah,
everything they could to fight against that and make me feel like I
yeah,
was wrong, but I mean, at a certain point, you can't deny it anymore.
yeah,
It's not
yeah. You
not
can't unsee
good
it once you see
information.
it. Yeah.
No, yeah, you cannot unsee it. You
No.
cannot go back. There was
Yeah.
like nothing I could do. You can't unsee it.
Yeah. So, Ashley, tell us a little bit before we go about how your life is now, because it's not all sad, is it? You got a pretty good
No,
life.
no.
You got a pretty sweet life now.
Yeah, I do. I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband is really awesome. I got remarried, and I have my daughter. She's 11 years old, and she'll be 12 soon. And I have a stepson that's also 11. And so it's the four of us and our dog Sandy. She's a golden retriever, and
Sweet.
I I have a very relaxed, calm life now. I mean, literally thanks to my mom who helped me out in the beginning, and my sister and my dad, and my husband now. I have been able to just spend time healing. Like I don't
Yeah.
even work right now. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been able to just take time to heal and be by myself and not have a crazy strict schedule and all these crazy things that I have to do. I really just enjoy my time at home, taking care of
Yeah.
the family and taking care of the house and just chilling. I guess I don't
How
really
do
do a whole lot.
how do you feel? Oh, Brent Michael said, "Wow, the Handmaid's Tale in real life." Yeah, and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
only said some of the story. I tell you, there's even more to it.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I will say vaguely the very like opening scene is to The Handmaid's Tale first season was very I could identify with it a lot.
Yeah.
That opening scene. I'll just say that.
Ashley, do you feel more? How do you feel about yourself now?
I feel a lot more confident. I feel like I don't know how else to put this, but I feel like the veil has been taken off of my eyes and I
Yeah,
can see everything clearly
yeah.
now.
It's really
I
weird, isn't it?
It's so weird.
Yeah,
I feel not I feel leery saying this a little bit, but I feel far more educated now. Um I was educated before, obviously,
yeah.
but
I
I
know exactly what you mean.
but
Yes,
what I
yeah,
mean is like there's a lot of information that was taboo information before,
yeah.
scientifically, things like that,
Very
and
much so.
so it's been really fun to learn about a lot of that stuff, about
Yes,
science, about the universe and evolution
yeah,
and all of these things that I didn't really learn before. And it's not like I was incapable of learning it before, but I just didn't even touch the information. And so I spend a lot of my time trying to learn a lot of things that I didn't learn before.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is like the whole world opens up, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it
And
feels
it's
like to
like,
me.
I've said this before, and I don't really know how else to explain it, but I see nature differently. When I go
Yes,
outside, it's like it's no longer, oh, God created this. It's so beautiful. It's like, wow, this is so cool. I wonder
yeah,
what the other planets are like, or wow,
yeah,
this evolved over millions of years, and like,
yeah,
and then also the realization that we're not as significant as we thought we were. We are
yeah.
just this little blip in time on this little insignificant planet, and
Yeah.
I'm not that important like I used to think I was.
That's
Really,
very interesting. That's a great topic. I can't wait for us to get into that a
yeah.
little bit more too. But
Yeah,
that is very interesting. Yeah.
It's really
Um,
liberating not being the center of the universe when you go
isn't
through
oh,
it?
that.
hey,
Yeah.
I know that we're at like a minute or an hour and 8 minutes, but can I
Yeah.
like end my last thing with remember that thing that I read to you guys that one time out of
Yes.
that book
Yes. Read it.
Ishmael, and it was
Read it.
about, it's not like from the book, like about the story, but it's about captivity. It's this,
Right.
whoop, hold on. Whoop, there it is. I got it. Okay. Okay, so this is just like a paragraph, and I'll read it. And this is about a tiger in captivity. And every time I read this, I'm like, that's me. That's me. Okay. So I wrote on here, I was the tiger, all right? In such places, he went on at last, where animals were simply penned up, they are almost always more thoughtful than their cousins in the world. This is because even the dimmest of them cannot help but sense that something is very wrong with this style of living. When I say that they're more thoughtful, I don't mean to imply that they acquire powers of ratiocination. I don't know if I said that right. But the tiger you see madly pacing its cage is nevertheless preoccupied with something that a human would certainly recognize as a thought. And this thought is a question. Why? Why? The tiger asks itself hour after hour, day after day, year after year. As it treads its endless path behind the bars of its cage, it cannot analyze the question or elaborate on it. If you were somehow able to ask the creature, why what? It would be unable to answer you. Nevertheless, this question burns like an unquenchable flame in its mind, inflicting a searing pain that does not diminish until the creature lapses into a final lethargy that zookeepers recognize as an irreversible rejection of life. And of course, this questioning is something that no tiger does in its normal habitat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
But I got out of it. I'm not in captivity anymore.
I'm gonna say,
Yeah.
we're glad you got out of the cage, and
Yes.
you got a lot of life ahead of you. So.
Yes, Kurt. Yeah.
So.
Well, Ashley, did you get it all off your chest?
Yeah, I did.
Yay!
I got everything for my outline. So.
Good. Well, I think we'll close there. And before we do, I'll just tell everybody that next week we're going to be interviewing an ex-Jehovah's Witness minister.
So
yeah, he's got just a really interesting story. I've interviewed him before, actually, and I could listen to him for hours. He has a fabulous story, and he's very intelligent. So we're really looking forward to that as well. So we'll end with that. And thank you, Ashley. I'm glad you're a cageless tiger now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share all that.
Yeah, it was our privilege. Our privilege. All right, guys, let's sign off. We'll see you guys later.
All right, bye.
Bye.